You are only 121. Anyway, they will join slowly. As somebody who are wishing me good morning, that in that motion. Okay. Good morning. So it's anyway. So do you find any blank page?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, can anybody tell me very briefly about Newton's second law?
The rate of change of momentum is directly proportional to the force applied, and the direction of motion is in the applied direction of the force.
Oh, fine. So, is there any objection from anybody?
No, sir.
No, sir.
So that is if this is the force and if this is the mass of the object and if A is the sorry is not like that. You said in this way, rate of change of momentum. Now, what is momentum? That is mass multiplied by velocity. That you know. Now, what about this force? If this is any object, now we start with this object as a particle. We apply a force here, and it will be traveling with this in this direction with this rate of change of momentum. Now, sometime we club together these two quantities, or sometime we segregate these two. So if m is constant, in that case, it will be mass multiplied by dv dt. And what about this? क्या रे बता?
Acceleration.
It is acceleration. So it is moving in this direction with this acceleration a having this mass m, and this is the applied force. In the direction of the applied force, this acceleration has been developed, and more popularly we write in this way for a constant mass. But there are so many things in between the lines. If two forces are acting on the same particle, then
So in the direction of the resultant?
in the direction of the resultant. Now, how to find out the resultant of F1 and F2? It's very easy. Graphically, analytically, there you can find. So it is if something like that, F1 and F2. So this is the direction for the resultant R, and along that direction, the particle will move with acceleration A. Okay, so again, the resultant force is mass multiplied by acceleration. Okay, these things are known. Now try to add some little more spices.
So what if it's a variable mass?
What is the?
So what if it's a variable mass?
Variable mass. Okay. Suppose a truck is moving or some object is there placed on a table. It is something like a box. And suppose sand is there, it is poured, it is having mass m initially. suppose there is a hole and continuously there is some moving out of this material contained within this box. Now here is the reducing mass or changing mass. Many other examples might be there where masses are changing. So if this object is moving subject to some force in this direction, now along this direction there will be acceleration A. If m is not constant, then definitely this will also be not constant. A very simple case just right now I remember and cite it for your understanding, but there are so many things. Now let us come back to our starting point where we considered the force is rate of change of momentum. Okay, the force is rate of change of momentum, and in which direction, or in short, if mass is constant, then mass multiplied by acceleration. Now in which direction that acceleration takes place? Definitely either along that single force direction, or if there are multiple number of forces, then find the resultant, and along the direction of the resultant, acceleration will be there. Suppose we have that same table. On that table, a block is placed of constant mass m, and force is applied in this direction. Suppose this is the force F. Now what about the direction of acceleration? It is constrained to move along this direction only. Now this acceleration is definitely not equal to force divided by mass. This F.
Sir, but the normal component will balance the force.
Exactly. So some reaction from the table is there, and not necessarily this table will provide
Adequate.
This normal reaction. Not necessarily. There may be some other resistance also.
Friction.
Friction. Now, what about this friction when it is moving? Definitely, it is not that what? Static coefficient of friction. It will be
Kinetic.
kinetic or kinematic. What?
Kinetic, sir. Anyway.
And this must to be replaced by the suitable value of the force due to gravity, that is mass multiplied by g. Along with this force F, and it is moving with acceleration A in this direction, or some other A in this direction. It is resting on a smooth table. There is no friction resistance, or it is resting on a rough table having friction coefficient, kinetic coefficient friction mu k. In that way, there may be other constants. So we need to include all such forces. Either you find the resultant along the direction of the resultant corresponding to that resultant force, the object will move, and simply we can find out the acceleration if mass is constant. So the resultant force divided by the mass is the constant acceleration. Otherwise, if there is some changing mass, or suppose a tanker is moving and there is a hole at the bottom of the tanker and it is moving along a horizontal track. So there also continuously water is moving out of that container, so decreasing the mass of that container continuously. So there may be so many other examples where masses are changing. Similarly, if we have some cracker like thing or some explosive, there also due to segregation of those masses, original mass doesn't remain same. So it breaks into different components, etc. etc. Now, is it the only way to do this thing for problem of dynamics, particularly this part, kinetics, where we include the reason behind the motion? Earlier we were talking about the kinematics, only the motion part, the position, displacement, velocity, acceleration, etc. Of course, time is another important parameter, but here we include the reason behind that motion. Now, this basic information what about the units? Suppose in SI,
Newton or kilogram meter per second square.
mass in kilogram, acceleration in meter per square second, and force is in kg meter per second square, and it has been denoted by
Newton.
Newton, capital N. Now you can take your time and go through internet example or information that what kind of experiment Sir Isaac Newton had to take up either to establish or to understand this relation force is equal to rate of change of momentum. बाद में देख लेना. Okay. Now there are so many modern instruments, so many photographic method, so many electronic gadgets, but during the time of Sir Isaac Newton, those things are not there. And mathematics was also not so strong to solve this problem of physics, the mathematical part. Anyway, that is a different story. Now, with reference to these, force is equal to mass multiplied by acceleration or rate of change of momentum. Now, can you remember if it is linear momentum, there was another name for momentum? Angular momentum.
Impulse.
बेटे angular momentum में अभी
Yes, sir.
Impulse F into T.
So what about the rate of change of angular momentum?
Torque.
Torque. That is the rotational effect of a force. Either you call it a torque or a moment of a force, or whatever may be the different forces get their moments about a particular fixed location, and with reference to that we find the moment, and the resultant moment will cause some non-linear motion, and for that angular momentum and its corresponding rate of change of that angular momentum, it is that a torque or moment or the rotational effect of a linear force, that kind of thing. Now normally what notations do you find in different books? For
Sir,
angular momentum?
L for angular momentum.
L for angular momentum, and rate of change of angular momentum?
Tau.
Now, in some book, you'll find in most of the book that tau is used for different other purpose. That tau is for stress. What kind of stress? When the force is acting parallel to the plane of
Tangential.
Okay, tangential to the plane. But that is the
Shear stress.
shear stress, tau. And normal stress is indicated by sigma. This is the popular notation in most of the books, sigma and tau, the normal stress and the shear stress. But it will come in that part of mechanics where we consider it is mechanics of deformable bodies or particularly deformable solids, and that is the internal resistance. Externally, when we talk about the force parallel to a plane and the distribution of that, it is coming to be in the form of friction, and that shear stress, it is some kind of internal friction resistance or something like that, but that is a different story. Now, whatever may be the notation, that linear momentum, angular momentum, and their rate of change with respect to time, that we can find the linear force or the resultant of the linear forces, or the rotational effect of those forces, or the directly the torque applied. Okay. Now, simply we consider this thing. So it is a relation for motion and the forces. Maybe forces are given, find the motion, or maybe the motion is defined, find the forces. So problem may be of two different kinds. ऊपर है ना? नहीं, आगे ले जाओ. Sorry, you could hear some household noises. I was shouting to my some क्या बोलते हैं? Newspaper distributor. Okay, that vendor. And normally I wait for him just so that he can collect the money from me. Of course, it is very small amount on the very last day of the month, because we also get our salary on the last day of the month. Definitely, I should also not keep all this thing pending. So I was just trying to call him back. Anyway, he is busy today and told me that, sir, tomorrow I'll collect it. So from your side also, that type of thing. So whenever you join the campus, naturally you should not keep your mess dues, your institute fees, etc. not pending. It should be regular, because your parents are giving you that same money for deposit to institute account regularly. But sometimes it is my experience. Sometimes I also myself during my student life have done that thing. Okay, बाद में दे देंगे, अगले महीने दे देंगे, इस महीने थोड़ा बहुत, you know. But you are missing those experience just throughout the beginning of your first semester. You are at home, and we have started offline classes very recently in some staggered manner. Okay.
So when will the institute reopen?
Institute has already reopened. PhD long back
For us.
For first year. For first year, according to the Senate resolution, first semester will be completely online. Then
Students have come.
Yes, of course.
Sir, IIST Shivpur will be open from 21st March. So sir,
हमने तो देखा था, हमारा फर्स्ट सेमेस्टर के बाद हो जाए तब भी चलेगा.
IIST Shivpur is also an IT type only, na sir? I think.
Yes. IIEST, Indian Institute of Engineering, Science and Technology.
Yes, sir.
So what is the original name of IIEST Shivpur? Who can tell me?
Bengal Engineering College.
Bengal Engineering College. Before that?
Bishop College. Bishop College it was.
And between Bishop's College and Bengal Engineering College, was there anything intermediate name?
Sir, forgot. I don't know. That.
Anyway, so after Bengal Engineering College, it was deemed to be university, BEC within bracket DU. Then it was full university, Bengal Engineering and Science University, BESU, BESU. Then it is under central government and IIEST. So
सर मैंने सुना है कि मतलब एनआईटी में मतलब ये कुछ दिनों से सर कुछ सेमिनार टाइप से चल रहा था, मतलब बहुत से स्कूल से कुछ स्टूडेंट्स आ रहे थे वो सेमिनार अटेंड करने के लिए. मेरे
हाँ,
कॉलोनी में
वो
थे उन लोग, वो लोग
वेबसाइट में उसका नोटिफिकेशन है, देख लोगे तो इट इज द मिमिक्री ऑफ दैट टर्म, द ओल्ड प्रोवर्ब दैट इज विद्यान सर्वत्र पूज्यते, वेयर राजा सदे से पूज्यते. So just modify.
स्वदेशे पूज्यते राजा विद्वान सर्वत्र पूज्यते.
Oh, fine, just reminding me. Now just a simple modification of that Vigyan, that is science. Vigyan Sarvatra Pujyate. Okay, so that is the title of that seminar for school kids. Anyway, that is the other story. Now, in this dynamics or kinetics, either the reason behind the motion is given, find the motion generated, or pattern of motion or movement is given, find the forces behind that movement. So problems may be of these two types. So for engineering application, normally we go for the second type, that is motion is defined, what forces are to be applied or combination of forces, etc. Now next thing, a single particle or a connected particle system. Now what is particle? Normally we understand it's a concentrated mass, but truly speaking, a vehicle moving on a horizontal track or one aeroplane, those are very big objects, but we consider them also as a particle. For what reason or for what situations?
So when the distance moved by then is very large.
When we neglect the rotational effect of the object about its mass center. Okay. So when it is moving as a whole, then we consider it as a particle, and that particle dynamics you can very nicely apply on that, and force is equal to mass multiplied by acceleration, or force is equal to a ddt of mv, etc. Those simple things you can apply very nicely. When it is a straight line motion, that is one thing. When it is curved motion, another thing, but primary kinematics relations must be known to us. Okay. So it's not like that we should forget kinematics part when we are doing the kinetics, because that path, the movement along that path, the rate of change of displacement or velocity, those things are also very important. And for that, kinematics knowledge is very important. Maybe to start for the kinetics solution, you have to solve some portion through kinematics, get some relation and apply for the kinetics part. Next, you tell me this kinematics part. There may be some more number of particles, not a single particle. There may be many particles which are connected to each other, and such kind of very simple example we can discuss. Rather, we have already taken that kind of this one. Suppose one block having mass 80 kg is resting on a horizontal floor, having the coefficient of kinetic friction as 0.25. Now, what will be the value of P to produce this acceleration along this direction for this mass 80 kg, this block, at 2.5 meter per second square? A very simple example. So what is the first step?
Resolving P.
Resolve the P.
First free body diagram will draw of the object.
Yes.
Free body diagram. So in this way, we draw the this is the weight, self weight 80 kg multiplied by the usual standard value 9.81 meter per second square for small g, that is 785 Newton. But I would prefer that you never consider this g value as 10 meter per second square. In school, sometime we accept that, we assume that to reduce the calculation effort. But anyway, for would-be engineers, you have to consider this 9.81 or 9.807 meter per second because there is the standard value of G on the Earth's surface. Now, this is the situation. This is not that a real free body diagram. Okay. Free body diagram means there is no resultant force. But this diagram, it gives all forces acting on this object. First, the self-weight. Next, the applied force at an angle 30 degree with the horizontal force P. There must be some normal reaction R and there should be some friction resistance F. And this is equivalent to, you can use equal to or you can use equivalent to a block of mass 80 kg moving with acceleration A. And when it is moving with that acceleration A, so this total resultant force of this system is equal to this mass multiplied by that linear acceleration A. That value is given. And similarly, this resultant force along horizontal direction here, that is equal to mass multiplied by acceleration, which gives the component of P along positive x direction, then the friction resistance F 0.25, the mu k that multiplied by R, and that is equal to this 80 kg multiplied by 2.5 meter per second. The problem is very simple. Then resolving all the forces along y direction, and as there is no acceleration, so mass multiplied by 0, and that is R minus vertical component of P minus P sin 30, because P sin theta is sin 30 is acting downward, and that minus 785 this self weight, and that is equal to 0. And truly speaking, this is not the free body diagram, and this is not those equations of equilibrium. These are equations of motion. So resultant force, that is equal to mass multiplied by acceleration or rate of change of linear momentum. Resultant force, that is equal to mass multiplied by that rate of change of linear momentum or mass multiplied by acceleration. So acceleration is 0. In that way, when the movement is restricted along this horizontal table only, or that's horizontal surface. But one more thing also we can consider, which will be rather, it will really give us some homely feeling corresponding to statics problem. Now, have you heard about the D'Alembert's principle? Of course, there may be some other.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
What is that?
There's like pseudo force only means.
Exactly.
Pseudo force.
So instead of writing this equation of motion, the force applied F will produce one acceleration A on that constant mass M. So that force is equal to mass multiplied by acceleration. Now, if mass is constant but force is variable, then what about the acceleration? Acceleration will also be variable. But anyway, we'll talk it about later. Just if we write in this manner, F minus ma is equal to 0, or F plus minus ma is equal to 0. So algebraic summation of all forces, all given forces, plus some, as you told, pseudo force whose value is mass multiplied by acceleration and whose direction is opposite to the actual direction of motion or actual direction of acceleration, then we can consider it equivalent to some pseudo-statics problem. And sometimes it gives us that homely feeling of solving very easily the problem of statics. And what about this equation? Not equation of static equilibrium, it is equation of dynamic equilibrium. And what about the name of that pseudo force? Minus ma. Very popularly, it is known as inertia forces. Now we can experience that imaginary force. Suppose you are using the elevator or a lift to travel up to suppose third floor or fourth floor. Now suppose it is non-stop between first and fourth floor. Okay. Now you enter the lift, close the gate, switch it on. Now suddenly it will take a good pickup. And what is your experience? सर मैंने लिफ्ट कभी चढ़ा ही नहीं, ये तो पैंडेमिक सीजन की वजह से. हाँ
सर ऐसा लगता है कि मतलब वेट ज्यादा हो गया हम लोग का.
वेट ज्यादा हो गया. So that is the effect of that pseudo force. Now if you are sitting in a vehicle which is at rest, now suddenly it starts moving. What about the effect on your body?
पीछे जाता है सर.
Suddenly ऊपर का हिस्सा moving backward. And similarly, when suddenly that vehicle stops, there you suddenly lean forward in the direction of motion. So that is that experience normally we feel, but mathematically we express in this way F plus minus ma, that inertia force, that is equal to 0, and now we feel comfortable to solve it with our idea of solving statics problem. So this issue is also there. But this force is equal to mass multiplied by acceleration. This is the primary thing which that law is given by that great scientist, Sir Isaac Newton, the physicist rather. So there comes the question, if force is constant, mass is constant, then actually acceleration will be constant. Now if the force is not constant, it is variable. So according to that variation, for a constant mass, acceleration will also be variable. So if force is a variable of time, then acceleration will be a variable of time, a function of time. Now there will be some rate of change of variation of acceleration also, ddt of a. Now can you remember from your previous knowledge of that rate of change of acceleration?
Sir, the circular motion there. No, not circular. Sorry. The velocity change.
Sir, are you asking what rate of change of acceleration?
Yeah.
Jerk.
So I expected that you take your time and you give the answer, because this is the class and it is interaction between the both sides, the service provider and the receivers or the end users. This is not examination hall, or this is not time bound examination hall that in 1 hour 150 questions are there, और this is a buffet system, जितना आप खा सकते हो उतना ही पैसा आपको मिलेगा, that much score you can make. So that is the thing. So that jerk is very important quantity, and for living being there is some restriction of that magnitude of jerk. ये woodpecker देखा आपने? एक
Yes,
बार्ड
sir.
होता है ना, कैसे दिखता है?
Yes, sir. सर उसका मतलब वो बहुत आगे निकला हुआ रहता है.
क्या चाहिए सर?
देखने में कैसा लगता है? कुछ combination of black and red, very कलरफुल. very
Yes,
bright.
sir.
But some special thing is there. It hits the wood or any other surface with its
Beak.
beak. And sometime I don't know. It is my experience. So whether you do not know or you know it, I do not know. That is, if you are not in a rather full-fledged city, multi-city, where only concretes are there and bitumen pavements are there is no tree, etc. But in NIT campus, I have seen it. So many trees and so many varieties of birds are there. And if they find some vehicle is placed or parked somewhere and not many people are there, they will approach that rear view mirror. Okay, just sit either above that or beside that and try to find its images in that mirror, and sometime it hits with its beak on that mirror. Of course, mirror is very strong. The bird cannot break it. But one thing I have noticed, when they hit it with so high frequency that hitting the object is not like that tuck, 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 etc. It is in a very high frequency, like something. Hasna mat.
Machine gun.
Then you understand the frequency of hitting that, and that is the effect. Just hold it. That is the effect on its brain or its container, which contains that brain, that is its skull system. There is not simple acceleration. There is a variation of acceleration. Suppose you hold one bucket like thing or a very small toy or something like that, and you hold it in between your two palms, hold it and give a very fast backward and forward motion to that bucket or something like that. Sometime वो हम मसाला मुड़ी बनाते हैं ना, तो एक डिब्बे में मुड़ी देते हैं, मसाला डालते हैं, थोड़ा सा ऑयल देते हैं और ढक्कन बंद करके we just put a vibration like thing. Hold it within your two hands and rapid backward and forward movement. And when you are moving it forward, there is some forward acceleration, and when you are suddenly coming back, there is some backward acceleration from plus A to minus A. So that change in acceleration is A minus minus A or minus A minus plus A. That is minus twice A or plus twice A. That change in acceleration over a small or fraction of second, small time, there is a rate of change of acceleration that is called jerk. And if by any chance some of you or somebody holds my head and put that type of masala muri preparation like thing apply on my head, I will simply die because my brain cannot take that unlimited jerk. There is some limit, allowable limit. But that particular creature, that bird, बंगाली में क्या बोलता है इसको? Kattogra. So that kattogra, that woodpecker, when it hits any surface with that high value of jerk, its brain is so rather majboot. Majboot means it is so nicely hold in that box inside the skull that it can resist that jerk. Anyway, there are so many other examples. Suppose the train accident, it is moving with some acceleration and suddenly it hits something. So there will be sudden jerk. And sometimes you will find so many people died without having any major injury like broken legs or hands, etc. But simply some blood coming out of the ears and noses, etc. So that is the effect of jerk without any noticeable injury over its body. Anyway, I have one important job that is taking your attendance. Just hold a minute, I'll be there. So do you find that same screen?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so this equation of motion for x direction, equation of motion for y direction, or we can utilize this F minus ma is equal to 0, just that pseudo force included there, the inertia force, and we feel comfortable like solving a problem of statics. And it was just advised by Professor D'Alembert, and it is by his name, D'Alembert's principle. Okay. Here is some familiar diagram. Okay. Now kinematics part is now very important before solving the dynamics part. Then what about the relation between velocity of block A and velocity of block B, or acceleration of block A and acceleration of block B?
Sir, acceleration of block A is twice the acceleration of block B.
Relation,
Block B.
positive or negative?
Sir, both will be in same direction. मतलब
Sir,
will
A cut
move
right
right,
and
will
B cut
move
down.
downward like that.
Negative,
One is,
one
one
negative.
is moving towards
One
right.
Sir,
negative,
one
sir.
opposite to
Downward.
tension and one in the direction
Negative,
of
sir.
tension.
If block A is moving towards right, then block B will be moving downward. And
Downward.
there is no natural tendency of this block A to move leftward, because if it is very heavy, instead of 100 kg, if it is 500, 600 or 700 kg mass, then this effect of this downward force corresponding to 300 kg may not be able to pull it towards right. But in no way the block A will travel towards left automatically. Only thing, either it is pulled by this self-weight 300 kg mass corresponding to the 300 kg mass, or it will remain there. So it depends on the value. Now for static equilibrium, what about the value of this weights for 100 kg mass and 300 kg mass, or for these blocks A and B? If it is 300 kg, then what about for static equilibrium? The tension developed in these two parts of this rope is 150 kg, 150 kg. If it is 300 kg, now tension transmitted is 150 kg. If it is frictionless or something like that, it will travel in this direction. If there is friction, there will be a tendency, either it can start moving or it may not. So that tension is the major contribution to generate or to give that tendency of movement. Now, if it is not in a static position, it is moving. In that case, you have to consider the accelerations towards right for block A, acceleration downward for block B. And when we consider all these things, then resultant force will be mass multiplied by acceleration in corresponding direction. Resultant force for 300 kg block will be the mass multiplied by the corresponding acceleration in the downward direction. And these simple diagrams will give you self-weight of block A, normal reaction N. Now, normally I prefer this normal reaction as R. Otherwise, the symbol Newton will be making some confusion with this N, and it is my preference. Okay. Now, when we consider about that smooth surface, self-weight WA, weight of the block A, here is the normal reaction R, there is no friction resistance. So whatever may be the tension T1 applied by that hanging weight MB or block B, the total tension is producing this acceleration A of the block capital A for that equation of motion. Now for block B, self-weight WB, tension developed in that link between the moving pulley C and the weight W the WB or the block B, it is the tension T here, and it is under the acceleration A of block B. So from that equation of motion, you get another information, and for the pulley C, it is subjected to T1, the tension in both sides of the rope passing over this pulley, because there is no loss over this lap of the rope and the pulley surface. So there is no friction loss like that T1 by T2 is equal to T to the power mu beta, that kind of thing. As well as this pulley is weightless assumed. So it is equal to that mass multiplied by acceleration. Of course, acceleration AB is there, but mass is 0. So 0 multiplied by AB, this is 0. Okay. So from such a simple relation of these kinematics, then extending for the equation of motion, we can solve this and we can get the value of the acceleration for the block B, and from the relation of kinematics, acceleration of block A will be double of that. Of course, its movement will be compatible. That means when block B is moving downward, naturally block A will be moving towards right. Maybe the problem is modified a little bit. That is, instead of placing the block 100 kg on this horizontal table, suppose we have one inclined surface on which the block A is placed. Normally these are the small hatch lines for the symbol for this surface. Now in that case, maybe there is some tendency of this block A, we do not know. Due to some heavy value of the self weight of block A, it may overpower the effect of the weight of block B, and there may be some downward motion. But in that case also, we need to draw the corresponding forces, that is self weight WA, the normal reaction RA. There may or may not be the friction resistance, and there will be some tension T1 along with the acceleration E. Or it may be up the plane depending on the value of the weight of the block B. So this kind of problem also you will find, these are very standard sample problem. So today you please go through as many example as you can. Just to start with, you go through the solved example from any book or from internet, from YouTube, etc. You can have so many information. So just go to the solved example, and in our tomorrow's class we'll come back to this point and discuss about other varieties of problem. So till then, you permit me, because it's already 10 and you have most likely another class there. Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, most welcome.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Good night, sir.